Araya, Khadijah, first, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And I gotta say, your short film, wow, talk about putting in humor, putting in a message, and not just knowing about what everybody's been going through for the last, I would say, what, year and a half, but also kind of put in a sneak peek on what we've all been doing inside our homes, which I think is incredible. First, sir, I got to ask you, how does it feel having your film in the Toronto International Film Festival this year? I think it's probably one of the most important years to have it in, especially with everything that's been going on, and being able to have a film in there, especially talking about what we've been going through, I think is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for both of us, this is our debut directorial debut in any film festival. So the fact that it gets to be TIFF is incredible.
Wait a minute.
It's a
Seriously, this is your very first.
Yeah,
yeah,
for
yeah. The
us.
two of us, yeah,
This
like
is
we co-did everything, and this is the first time either of us have directed. So
What?
it's it's pretty incredible that on our first swing we got the TIFF.
Oh my goodness. Oh, congratulations on that. Wow.
Appreciate that.
Okay, you know what, Khadijah, I got to go over to you. How did this collaborate? First, how do you two know each other, and how did this collaboration come together?
it's kind of funny. Araya, referred to us recently as two ships passing in the night over the last like decade, I would say. Back in 2009, when I was in first year theater school, my class went to go see a show, Another Africa at Can Stage, a Can Stage production, and Araya was in that show. And then years later, we ran into each other when we were both telemarketing as our side jobs. And then years after that, an old roommate of mine was moving out and needed to find someone to fill their room in the apartment. And I remember getting a text message from them being like, "Yeah, there's this guy who showed up to look at the room. You can meet him this afternoon." And I showed up and it was Araya. So that was 4.5 years ago. We've been living together as roommates ever since. And this collaboration came to be when a good friend of mine, Jay Stevens, DOP, director of photography, and all-around filmmaker that I adore. We had worked together on a couple projects already over the last couple of years. And at the height of the Black Lives Matter movement and, during the pandemic, Jay emailed me and said, "I'm a white artist with a particular skill set that I'd love to extend to you as a Black artist whose voice I admire and want to support. So if there's a story that you want to tell, I've got the equipment. Let's tell that story." So I turned to Araya, my roommate and friend, and I said, let's make something together. We had both at the time, lost out on work because of the pandemic. We had been sitting at home watching what was going on in the world as far as the protests and whatnot were going on, and we were just both really moved and affected by it all, as was I'm sure everyone else in the world. So it was sort of natural for us to collaborate with one another on how to develop this project. I'll let Araya talk a little bit more about what that development was like.
Yeah, yeah, like you just said. So the extension of the possibility of making something had come in, and I had out of the blue been asked maybe like a few weeks before that to create a piece as part of a pandemic online capsule of Canadian filmmakers' just expressions. Essentially, you could do anything you wanted just with the resources you had at home, and this would be the space for that. So I made a little piece that became sort of like the framework of what we took to become Defund. It was about a guy who was like at home in his like pandemic life, lived alone in this scenario, and had been doing a lot of like, I in real life had been doing a lot of FaceTime dating. And so I had written this thing about this guy who would like develop these like really large feelings with somebody that he'd only ever experienced through a screen. So he's making this thing with this sort of poetic meditation about love overlaid on top of it. And as he's shooting B-roll for this like thing he's going to send out, this figure appears seemingly out of nowhere, running down the street and falls down in front of him in the middle of the street. And when the runner looks up, the filmmaker and him meet eyes, and they see that they're identical, that it's the same person. But before either of them can deal with it, the runner looks back and then has to take off, and the filmmaker's left with the what just happened kind of moment. And that's the end of that little piece. But the idea was this like thematically similar thing of being in isolation, being alone, what it feels like this like claustrophobic nature of pandemic life met with the world still happening outside and it forcing its way into your bubble. So like that, Khadijah had seen that. And so we kind of like had been like spitballing about, okay, back and forth, is there something around that or thematically connected that we can use? And Khadijah had really strong feelings around and instincts towards telling like a generational story inside of it. And like my natural extension of that project was that this guy would like have these nightmares at night and take off into the night on his bike because it was the only time that the world felt safe and it was quiet. And over time that it felt like it was his. And as he starts to get comfortable and create ownership of like being outside, he runs into a group of displaced folks who quickly check him and make him realize that he doesn't own anything. And then like that mentality, you know, how quickly we go back to this like grab, own, what is mine way of thinking, which seemingly we had left behind in the pandemic because there was this time to reflect, but we revert pretty quickly back to the ways in which we operated before the pandemic. So anyways, all these ideas are sort of floating around, and as me and Khadijah started spitballing, they morphed into what became Defund, which is really just an extension of our own experiences of being inside and wanting to participate in what was going on outside, and this kind of like the butting of heads of those two feelings of wanting to protect yourself in one way, but actually needing to protect yourself in a much larger way means going outside and engaging with the powers that be that are actually oppressing us as a whole. So this like that juxtaposition was something that really fueled everything behind Defund.
Khadijah, I want to ask, how did you guys choose the things that you would present on screen and what was going on inside? And I find it really interesting because again, very strong message, which we're going to get into. Also, you've already mentioned about that, about Black Lives Matter. But at the same time, it was almost as if you guys went and stuck a camera in almost everybody else's home and just showed what everybody was going through and trying to do and do. So how did you go about picking so many different subjects that we've been going through at home to what we get a chance to see? Because you had a bundle of stuff to choose.
It was genuinely a reflection of what our lives were like at that time. Araya and I, you know, the dynamic that we have, that the twins have in the film really reflects the dynamic that Araya and I have as friends and as roommates. We are so often, especially like last summer, you know, the height of 2020, we were bursting out of our respective bedrooms and like, you know, out of various rooms in the apartment with our phones in hands. We're like, did you see this? Do you know what's going on right now? Sending each other petitions and whatnot to sign. And, you know, the day-to-day routine of the sanitizing and the, you know, the routines that we had to go through to feel safe as far as COVID was concerned. And, you know, as far as monitoring the, you know, it's the duality of what we were dealing with the pandemic and what we were dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement. And so much of that actually was just our lives. There were a few more moments that we wanted to include. There was this sequence that we had, you know, developed where Araya's character, we were doing a bun straight, and Araya's character was going to be biking down the street with like planks of wood laid across his bike and whatnot, just to know, and in our minds, that was an extension of community, which I think is still really present in the film. But yeah, it really was a hodgepodge of moments that really and truly existed in our day-to-day lives.
Araya, how important?
One of the first ones that we did was the workout sequence. because we were
That
doing
was
that.
funny.
We started doing insanity workouts together because we had to do like home workouts. So it literally was that. Like by the end of the workout, we were like always like, yeah, here we go, let's get ready. And then it was hot, you know, like it was like hot and muggy. And by the end, it was just like I would be sitting in a corner just staring out into nothing, and Khadijah would be like breathing and pacing in circles. But yeah, it was our lives. It was our lives.
But the thing I was surprised about, and again, I don't want to give too much away, though, was the fact that in a lot of ways, I'm going to say characters for this, got along. Whereas most people did not get along at certain points during this pandemic. I'm curious why you didn't go down that road, or did you in a different manner when it comes to Black Lives Matter?
I think the point actually for us, our characters are based off of us, and we did not end up in this kind of like conflict setting that a lot of people did when they were like then forced to be together all the time. So I think
so you like each other.
Yeah, like and like, you know, fortunately we lived together for a few years by the time the pandemic rolled around, so we knew each other really well, and like, yeah, like our relationship is just great. So we never actually ran into these like really hard conflicts that probably many other people did. And, you know, to not give away too much of the film, the point actually is that these two people that are like almost entirely in sync could then have differing views on what something means that they're both working towards is the point. So if they had too many points of conflict before, it would be a disservice to where we want to leave people at the end.
That's where I wanted to go down to. Khadijah, talk a little bit about how important it was to make that statement or that point on what we were all watching and experiencing with the journey of Black Lives Matter, because to me, this is the first film that actually has put that stamp on it. How important was it to make sure that that was part of this theme, not just for what we were going through emotionally and physically, but what we were also seeing too on news, social media, in the newspaper, so many different ways, and of course, like I said, social media.
Yeah, I think that it's, you know, it's it's quite apparent that this type of subject matter can be quite divisive, and that it can cause that sort of conflict that wasn't present in the relationship in the film between the two characters. And so for us as writers, we really wanted to make sure that we left things open-ended in a sense that, you know, I think that at its core, part of the message of the short film is that nothing is definitive. Even the idea of what it means to defund the police is not definitive. And protest is not definitive. One of the other actors in the film, Anand Rajaram, who plays the displaced individual, he and I have been working on another production, a play that was meant to be live, but has now been recorded and turned into, accommodated for the digital space. It's called Henry G20, and it's an adaptation of Henry V that's based on the G20 riots that took place in Toronto 10 years ago. And working on that project, that play, brought a consciousness to me about what it means to protest and what it means for a coalition of efforts to come together to fight the powers that be. And that was something that we really wanted to bring, or that was something that I really wanted to bring to this project, to bring to Defund, was this awareness that it is absolutely necessary to go out there and to, you know, to protest and to sign the petitions and to, you know, contact your local Congress, your local, you know, politicians, and be vocal with an understanding that there are so many other people out there who are vocalizing their concerns as well. And that, yeah, you can err on the side of what is right versus what is wrong, but at their core, everyone feels that they are right. So as a filmmaker, I never want to be out here, you know, bringing down the gauntlet to say, this is what you should be feeling as an audience member. And I would like to think that Defund does not do that.
It doesn't do it. I'll tell you something. It flies, but man, you get so many different messages through this. This question goes to either one of you, okay? And I hope you both jump in on this. How much is scripted? How much is off the top of your head? And the third question is, man, how did you guys even find out that you were going to be in the film festival?
I'll answer the first part. I will say it is entirely scripted. We worked really,
Wow.
we worked together to, beat out what moments we wanted to include. And then we separated and wrote some scenes, individually, and then some scenes we had to write together. But yeah, it was very much the cadence. Like Araya said, we can't stress this enough. I think that the relationship that we have as friends, and as artists, we've both seen each other's work many times over the years. So I think that when I was writing, I was absolutely writing for Araya's voice. I was writing things that I thought I knew would be funny or impactful coming out of his mouth. So, and the same for him, I would say.
Yeah,
Araya,
totally.
And
100%. So like the fact that we know each other so well, we can write for each other, and like I think we can write for each other in a way that's interesting, in ways that we could not write for ourselves because we've observed the other so often.
Mm-hmm.
So like the opening scene, like I wrote that one, and I was like, oh yeah, this is Khadijah for sure. Like that thing with her.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
I
What
won't
people
say
see
like
it.
the details of what that is.
Yeah.
But like I was like, oh yeah, that's 100%. I've heard that like 90 times. I know it. I know it inside and out. Let's go. But yeah, to answer the other half of your question.
Yes.
With TIFF, we found out, we were in conversation. So, in the beginning, like I said, this is our pretty much our first time through. Khadijah had a film that had like gone through a festival circuit, but with Defund, it was a bit of a different experience. So it fits in like potentially in many different ways. And so we didn't really know. We cast a pretty wide net as far as our festival submissions go. And, we're the producers of this film along with Jay Stevens. So it really is us like figuring out what the strategy is going to be. And we always knew that TIFF was where we wanted to start. Like we wanted to have TIFF be our world premiere. And then we had to build contingencies in case that didn't happen. And we were fortunate enough to get into another festival that would have made us ineligible for TIFF. So once we got into the other one, we then had to reach out to TIFF to say, look, we need to know something if we can. Otherwise, respectfully, if it's not going to go our way, we're very happy to premiere with this other festival. Thankfully, the people at TIFF were amazing and really communicative, and they were very accommodating with making sure that, they didn't break any rules to like tell us something out of school, but they did make it possible for us to know as early as possible and make informed decisions. So we got an email from the programmer saying that, your official invitation's on the way, but we just wanted you to know that, we're thrilled to have Defund have its world premiere at TIFF 2021.
Bravo. What are the chances the two of you are going to be working together on another short film, or maybe even something longer, and just anything when it comes to entertainment? What are the chances the two of you working together again on something?
I think chances are pretty high.
I love this.
We're cooking up some stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing. Look, I'm going to let you folks go. Congratulations on this, man. I'm just getting goosebumps right now. Just thinking about what you guys have accomplished, the stamp that you've put in for this year, because in a lot of ways, if people want to know what people were going through during the pandemic, this is one of the films to see, because it's not just what was going on outside, it was really going on with what's inside, and you guys captured it perfectly from beginning to end. Again, congratulations. Looking forward to the other works that you guys plan on doing in the future. Hopefully we can talk again. Who knows? Maybe next year we can talk about another film that you guys at TIFF.
Right.
But either way, at least we got the first one in. Congratulations, folks.
100%. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, Rudy.